theory we had for our project is the Bandura social learning theory. Before we get into the details of it, let's start with the man who created it. Albert Bandura was born in December of 1925 in Bandura, Alberta, Canada. He would get his education at the University of British Columbia, receiving a degree in psychology in 1949. He would then head to the University of Iowa to work on his graduate studies, receiving his MA and PhD in 1951 and 1952, respectively. From there, he would come to realize that the University of Iowa's psychology department is one of the best in North America. With this quote, the Iowa psychology department was not Mr. Rogers' neighborhood. It was indeed an intellectually lively and demanding place where major theoretical issues were pursued with a passion. It was refreshingly free of colorless eclecticism. Along with this quote, learning would be exceedingly laborious, not to mention hazardous, if people had to rely solely on the effects of their own actions to inform them what to do. Fortunately, most human behavior is learned observantly through modeling, from observi. Bandura would then join the Stanford University Psychology Department in 1953, where he would begin to develop the idea for the social learning theory.
The social learning theory. What is it exactly? The concept was developed by Bandura, focused on the idea that one can learn through observation or direct observation without direct reinforcement, or the idea that one can learn within a social context. The theory not only focuses on that, but also on the observation of rewards and/or punishments. The theory itself relies on a 4-step modeling process. These 4 steps include attention, retention, reproduction, and motivation. Each of these steps follow a guideline of sorts. Attention follows the model that you must learn to pay attention, such as demonstrated in this comic here, in which, for the attention model, if anything distracts or pulls the attention away from the model itself, it can have negative effects on the observational learning as well. And then if the model is more interesting, so say someone is making a paper airplane and they're showing a more complex way to do it, you are more than likely to dedicate your full attention and focus to this version of learning. The second step, retention, contains 2 sub-steps. The 2 sub-steps include remembering what you paid attention to, and the inclusion of symbolic coding, mental images, symbolic and motor rehearsal, and cognitive organization. The third step in this theory is going to be reproduction, which includes 2 sub-steps as well. Those 2 sub-steps are that once you have retained the information and paid attention to it, you put what you learned to the test and practice what you learned, whether it be behavior or skill to improve upon. The learned behavior can advance that skill, such as seen in these pictures here with the meme, and then also, as it's coming up, with the father and daughter both brushing their teeth. She is reproducing what he is doing in this step. And then lastly, the final step is motivation, where this step is for the person to essentially get the motivation to intimidate the behavior that has been modeled for them. This is also where reinforcement and punishment can come into play. So let's say a person observes another person drawing on a wall. The person may get punished because of what they're doing, and then this could create a scenario where next time the person can find a way to not get negative reinforcement, and they can draw on a piece of paper instead of the wall, so that way they won't get punished. Of course, there are other factors that go into this, including the environment, the environment that the person is in, their behavior, and the personal factors such as the biological or affective events that have an influence on their action. And this theory actually does have a lot more that goes on with nature versus nurture, and a look at how future punishment and reinforcements can affect these things. And then here are also some comics to show the ideas and work more or less on a basic scale, or on a more simplistic kind of single-step stage. Granted, they are all done on a different form or setting, such as here with the younger girl intimidating the older girl. And then another one here is the kids intimidating the wrestlers as they are following the 4-step process of paying attention, remembering what they paid attention to, reproducing what they had remembered, and then having the motivation to go on with it. And this also can kind of be a form of play if some kids do decide to imitate that. And then this clip demonstrates a guy turning around in an elevator because he learned that he shouldn't probably be facing that way. And then the same can go with the baby intimidating the older man's face here. And with the younger kid here pretending to shave his face, he is probably intimidating something that he learned from his father beforehand. And then this other one is a baby dancing to Beyonce, or attempting to anyways, trying to follow that 4-step process. And the same can go with this girl on the phone alongside her mother, pretending to do what she is doing. And the same can also go for this girl ironing clothes, much like her father is. And the observational learning theory can also be used in a teaching setting, such as an example for sports classes or karate and dance lessons, in which the model would be the teacher, and then the student is going to be the one following the 4 steps of observation. So like an example, when the students are watching their teachers do these dance routines, they have to pay attention what they are seeing the model do, then they have to remember what the model did in the first place, whether it be something normal or something more advanced. Then they have to attempt to reproduce it by remembering those 2 previous steps and doing what the teacher had done, and then have the motivation to go through the whole thing. And this also does kind of play a part in the normal classroom, where a teacher can teach a child how to politely ask to do something like go to the bathroom as seen here, instead of just obnoxiously yelling. And then this comic also, on a much more basic scale, instructs how you would draw basic comic panels. And then this next clip from Big Daddy will also have an explanation of how it could work in a different setting.
Microsoft went down 3 points. We got to save some money. Here, give it a shot.
What the hell is he doing?
He's shopping.
Microsoft went down 3 points.
And so in that clip, you could see that one of the Sprouse twins did follow that 4-step model. He paid attention. First, he had to pay attention to what Adam Sandler was doing, which was throwing a can on the ground. And then from there, he had to remember what Sandler was doing in an effort to go on to the 3rd step, which would be reproducing, where from there, he would be throwing the can onto the ground, much like how Sandler did. And then lastly, he had the motivation to go through all 3 of those steps and do that, therefore completing the 4-step attention process. And of course, there are some things with this theory that only work visually as opposed to written, as with the Bobo doll experiment that will be explained here shortly.
One of the most famous experiments in the social learning theory was the Bobo doll experiment. It was conducted in 1961, and the experiment consisted of a few different groups in the process. The first group observed adults aggressively playing with the Bobo doll. The second group observed adults playing with the doll, but non-aggressively. And the final group had no exposure to the models before. Essentially, what happened was the children essentially did what they saw. So in the case, the children in the aggressive group acted very aggressively, even more so than which they had originally seen. It was also observed that boys were more aggressive than girls in this model. Bandura also, however, saw this in a different light, because within the experiment there were no consequences. So he ran the experiment again, and this time he had children being punished based on how they acted toward the clown. And it was found that some children reacted differently, which each learning what the punishment was, altering how they acted thereafter. This experiment in the long run, however, did help cement his learning theory and the 4-step modeling process of attention, retention, production, and motivation. To conclude, this experiment and theory has made Bandura famous and has cemented itself in pop culture, and has been conducted in various non-violent ways, including using the social learning theory to conduct self-attendance at work and training supervisors, both which help the confidence of the supervisors and the employees will show up on time more often. Overall, Bandura has changed the way we use psychology to study how people develop and learn what they see. Without Bandura, we may have never reached this concept, as it helps learners who need to see what they have to do. It also helps teachers who attempt to give presentations or demonstrations to the kids how they can model from it, and researchers wondering why children act the way they do so much more. This theory shows that what people see may very well be how they act.